Hello and welcome to The Extra Point. I am Kendall Gammon, and today, in a moment, I'm going to be joined by Danny Weurffel. But first, I want to give a thank you to Crown Automotive of Lawrence, Kansas, for all your Toyota and Volkswagen needs. Give them a call at 785-843-7700 or simply go to crownautomotive.com. And with that, our guest, Danny Weurffel, former Heisman Trophy winner in '96, my former teammate. Danny, I appreciate you agreeing to come on today.
Kendall, it's great to be with you. I love the stuff that you're doing. I love the difference you're trying to make. I'm happy to be with you today, bud.
That's really cool. And we're going to talk about what you're doing as well. But for those who don't know, you and I were teammates down in Nolens under Coach Ditka, which was, we could devote a whole show to that probably, in a good way probably. But it's amazing how you go different ways in your career and then you don't connect. I believe this is the first time we've reconnected since '99. Would that be correct?
Yeah, we look just the same, but some years have passed. But yeah, no, life is strange, and especially in the NFL, you move from team to team so often, and you do lose track. So it's great to reconnect, bud.
Yeah, you talked about that. We look the same. We're both follically challenged, as I like to say. So that's good. Okay, that's part of it. We'll just say that's because we put our helmet on one too many times. So maybe recap, folks, a little bit about your career. Of course, you were a Florida Gator. You won the Heisman Trophy. We don't have enough time to really go into all of the awards you won, which is just phenomenal. But you're drafted by the New Orleans Saints. From there, how did your career go?
So I played for Ditka for 3 years, and then after that 3 years, I went to the NFL Europe in the spring of 2000 and was on a great team, and we won the World Bowl. You know, probably people hadn't heard of it, but at least sounds a little bigger than the Super Bowl. So that was a really exciting season. I came back that fall and was on the Packers in 2000. In 2001, I was with the Bears, which is interesting, being on the Packers and the Bears back to back because they're such big rivals. And then I went and spent 2 years in Washington with Coach Spurrier when my college coach went to be the coach with the Redskins.
Oh, wow. I've forgotten about that one, but I remember it now. Do you remember a gentleman by the name of Jeff Reinbold when you were overseas?
That sounds very familiar.
Okay, yeah, he told me to tell you hello. He was evidently coaching with them as well. I think he might have been special teams, and which obviously wouldn't be part of. But anyhow, so let's talk about this. Going back, people talk to me, and since I played in the league and I was a long snapper, they just assumed that I've long snapped my whole life. I didn't start long snapping until my third year in college, and it was just by chance that I got caught messing around. I really didn't want any part of it because it meant I was going to have to run more as an offensive lineman, and of course we're allergic to that. You growing up, Danny, I mean, were you QB the whole time? Were you more than a one-sport athlete? Just tell me a little bit. Take me back just a little bit.
Well, from the time I was little, I dreamed of being a long snapper, and it wasn't until my senior year that I played quarterback. No, I'm kidding.
That was nice.
I loved being a kid, going out in the backyard and playing catch with your friends, and they're running down the field, and then they start to turn, and you can't throw it to where they are. You got to throw it way out in front of them somewhere, and you kind of got to guess where they're going to be when the ball gets there. And that simple thing was always so fun to me. So I loved playing quarterback. When I was little, my dad was in the Air Force. We lived in Spain. I played soccer. I played some baseball younger, but not as much as I got older. I loved basketball. So I played a lot of basketball through high school. My two main sports were basketball and football. I loved basketball, maybe a little bit more, but there was more 6'2" quarterbacks running around in college than 6'2" power forwards.
Right.
So I just became just over that time in my high school, ended up having a good career. We had a great coach move in. I kind of feel like I've been the recipient of a lot of weird things that always come together that have worked out for me, and it was right. We had this amazing coach move and take over our high school program right when I was going to be a junior, and that really helped accelerate my career to give me a chance to play in college.
I'm going to go back with one thing because it just came. I thought it was interesting. You talked about how you love the idea of basically leading a receiver and throwing the ball where he's going to be and having to look out. That can almost kind of be a metaphor for life, which is sometimes you've got to look out there and really be able to see what's coming before it actually materializes.
Well, I think that's critical in relationships. It's critical in anything you do, and especially if you're a leader. In fact, that's part of your job as a leader, is not to be able to just handle what's happening, but somehow create time and space where you can kind of get out of the daily grind and see where things are headed, and have a sense where we need to be in relation to what's happening around us, and then help steer the ship and get people to move in that direction too. It's tough. But yeah, it's a great illustration. Life's not just about where you are. You got to also pay attention to where you're headed.
Okay, so you're a four-sport athlete: football, baseball, basketball, soccer. Not an Air Force brat, but probably moved around a little bit, as you said, if you were overseas. Probably maybe tough at the time, but maybe as you look back at it, served you well?
Yeah, so we moved every 3 years, sometimes more, and definitely tough at the time. I remember being going from 8th grade to 9th grade, and we moved from Colorado to Florida. And, I was established on the basketball team. I was going to be the quarterback on the football team. And now we're going somewhere new that I have no idea what's going to happen. I can remember being in the car driving down. I can remember the song that some of the songs that I listened to was, and that happened at several times in my life. But looking back, I see how each of the new adventures brought a lot of blessings, a lot of things I would have never guessed. And, also look at this point in my life, I see a lot of people that are very rigid in sort of their view of the world. And I think if you grow up in one place and you're surrounded by people that are very similar to you, it's very easy to be kind of very narrow in how you think of everything and people. And to have moved so many different times and seen things that were so different and not wrong, just different.
Right.
And there's beauty in some of those. And I think that was a blessing. And then secondly, you're forced to make new friends. You're forced to interact and start over. And that's really hard for a lot of kids. I think for me, sports helped, but you just learn how to interact with a lot of different kinds of people.
It's interesting. I feel like I hear you saying that it offered perspective that maybe you never would have had that not happened. Is that a fair statement?
Oh, yeah. I think that's absolutely true for me. It was tough at the time, but it definitely kind of led me to see things in a broader way that I feel blessed.
Okay, so a junior, you get a new high school coach. That was obviously successful because you ended up at Florida, so you had to be highly recruited. How did that go generally, though? Was it down between a few schools, or was it always going to be the Gators?
No, I was probably leaning towards Florida State. My older sister was there. I got recruited strongly by Alabama and loved Gene Stallings and really considered there. And at the end of the day, it was, Coach Spurrier being quarterback coach and guru that he was, along with, the University of Florida is an incredible university. It's I think in the top 5 now in the country for public universities. And I just remember asking myself, if I weren't playing football of those schools, I would have gone to Florida. So those were the 2 reasons: Coach Spurrier and the academic institution.
Yeah, and as we look at it right here, throwing that ball, and you did that really, really well in college. Again, won all kinds of awards, All-American, top player your last couple of years. You win the Heisman. In your wildest dreams, could you have ever imagined not only that you'd be playing high-level Division I football, but that you would win a national championship, the first ever for Florida, I believe, and also be named a Heisman Trophy winner after having been a Heisman Trophy finalist, I believe, the year before? Talk about that.
Well, when I look at that last season, 1996, and even hearing you talk about it, Kendall, it doesn't feel like it was real. Like it feels a little bit more like the ending to a movie. I don't know if you've ever watched a movie and you're like, oh, that would have never happened in real life because it was too perfect.
Right.
That's sort of what I experienced. I remember one of my main goals in 9th grade. They said, what are your goals? And I remember writing down, I wanted to get a college scholarship. I didn't know even what sport it would be in. And so, I didn't necessarily think through that. Although it's a funny story. Somebody has a video of me playing ping pong like in 5th grade. And I hit a good shot, and the dad on camera said, man, he's a great athlete. He's going to win the Heisman one day. So, of course, they love that video.
Wow.
Like he was a prophet.
That's really, really cool. Okay, so yeah, you accomplish those goals, and which is phenomenal. But then you get drafted by the New Orleans Saints, and that's where we met because I was already there. Uh, that was an interesting time. I mean, the Saints weren't that good. You're coming off a Heisman Trophy. We can go on and on and on. A lot of expectations, and then you're playing for the coach, Mike Ditka. What were your thoughts at that time?
Well, I mean, I was hopeful. I was, coming in there thinking, man, maybe we can be the group that helps win the Saints
Right.
first, Super Bowl championship. And I think we all had, a lot of optimism with Coach Ditka there too. But it's like one of those things in life. It just didn't go the way that you wanted it to go. And I think if I look at, my 7 years in the NFL, it'd be an understatement if I said much good about it. I didn't have a lot of success anywhere that I went. I got hurt a couple times, and so it definitely didn't play out the way that I hoped. But when I think about like what does it take to be really successful for a football team and for a quarterback, there's so many things that have to come to play.
Right.
And when I look at my life, like I said, the high school team came together. We won the state championship. My college team and coach and players were a unique fit. We won the national championship. I get to win the World Bowl, as we mentioned. So I really, in perspective, feel like everything came together for me so many times and so many places that that's more of what I focus on. And then the other thing is, my time in the NFL introduced me to a lot of great people. And ultimately, and I know we'll talk about it shortly, being in New Orleans introduced me to what's become the life work for me as well.
Okay, so let's kind of go into it. This next segment, the power of gratitude. What are you thankful for? Who are you thankful for? I think this is so very important in our lives. When I say that to you, Danny, who, what, how, where, what does it mean to be thankful, to be grateful?
I got three things. I'll try to
Okay.
be quick. The first one, I was asked to write a book about my success, and they told me I had to think of something unique about me that maybe people could use to be successful. And I could remember, Kendall, at key moments in my life, what I said to myself, like wanting to win a race, saying, "You're so fast," or wanting to not make a bad decision. "Danny, you're a good kid." I can remember
Interesting.
a competition where I was playing basketball thinking, "You are so strong." And so I thought, I was going to have this. I knew how to talk to myself better than some people. Well, we had our first son, Jonah, and he was a little bitty baby. And I walked by the nursery one day, and my mom was visiting. So Jonah's grandmother was in the nursery holding my son. And I heard her saying things like, "Jonah, you are such a good boy. You are so strong. I love you so much." And then for like 20 or 30 minutes, she kept speaking this words of affirmation. And I kind of cried and realized I shouldn't write the book. My mom should,
Wow.
because it wasn't my voice. It was my mom, my dad. It was the coaches, the pastors, the youth pastors, all the different people that poured into me. And that, none of us are really self-made. Even if you had a lot of things going against you, we're blessed by many other people. And so to answer the first question, it would be my mom and specifically, and then all the people that went out of their way to invest in me. Even to this day, I have people that have gone so far beyond what I could imagine to teach me, to mentor me, to guide me. That's number one. The next two are actually maybe a little bit different. In that they're not positive things. So in 2005, I was working at Desire Street in New Orleans, and our vision was to impact a neighborhood in New Orleans, but one day impact other neighborhoods. And Hurricane Katrina came. We lost our home and everything in it. The ministry in the Ninth Ward was decimated. It was one of the most difficult couple years you could imagine. And through that process, we ended up still doing a lot of tremendous work in New Orleans, but we moved our headquarters to Atlanta. And now Desire Street has impacted, probably 40 to 50 neighborhoods since then. And currently our goal is to impact, 20 new neighborhoods by 2025. So I think the challenge of Katrina was that it was so hard, but it forced Desire Street to grow, and our impact has grown. So I think that's one. And then the other one is a little more personal. 10 years ago, Kendall, I got a very unique autoimmune disorder called Guillain-Barré. And basically your immune system attacks your nerves and you start to get paralyzed and you lose function and you get really sick. And depending on how bad you are, it can be lethal. And so for me, fortunately, it wasn't that bad. I was paralyzed for, couldn't really move or walk. We're not fully paralyzed, but couldn't do much for several weeks. And then I could kind of barely move around one room for, a couple months. And then I was tired for a year.
Wow.
And it was a incredibly difficult situation, but the experience, I really didn't distract myself with movies. I sat, I journaled, I committed to dealing with whatever emotions came up. And in many ways, it really changed who I really was as a person. Became more authentically that person I was always trying to be, but actually wasn't acting at it as much, and actually being more authentic and humble and present and connected. And so that was by far one of the hardest things I've been through, but I'm grateful for it because it has made me a far, far better man, husband, and leader.
That's phenomenal. I think that's something that not a lot of people know about. I think it's interesting, Danny, that you talk about it. It took you to another level. I mean, just, candidly, I'll say, meeting you and being at Bible study and being around you in New Orleans. I mean, you did a lot for me. I don't know if you remember, but I remember my second son had been, before he was born, we had some tests and didn't know if we were going to have a special needs child or what it was. And I can remember praying with you about that and some things. And I know that goes way, way back. But really where I'm going with this also is you have a strong faith and it's out there and it's on your sleeve. And I always found it amazing, and still do, the fact that the people that I was around who maybe had little faith, no faith, didn't believe, spirituality was different or whatever, none of that ever mattered to you, number one. And then number two, people were still drawn to you. I mean, you have, I think, a very unique ability to be authentic and people still be drawn to you, even if they maybe don't understand or agree. And I think that's just a beautiful thing.
Well, interesting. Even earlier today, we had a staff meeting for Desire Street, and one of our leaders led a short devotion. And the gist of it was, it's every year that technology grows and social media grows, there's more and more chatter. There's
Right.
more and more opinions. There's never any opinion that can be had that doesn't have 50 counter opinions. And all that to say, people, I think, more and more they care less about what you say. They care less about what you think and what you believe. They just look at you and see how you live your life. And I think, trying to be humble, trying to listen to people when they're talking, to be present, to recognize when somebody's going through a strange emotion, that you don't have to fix it, but you can just be there with them.
Mm-hmm.
Those are things that I continue to learn. And I just think how we interact and how we care. One of the first quotes I learned a long time ago is, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And so I think
Mm-hmm.
that's one of the keys.
So this can take us into the next segment, which is my mantra: make a difference. How can you affect the life of somebody else? I know that's big with you. Talk about what you do for communities. I think you brought up the Desire Street project.
So yeah, when I was in New Orleans, I got involved. I volunteered with a small organization in the Desire neighborhood called Desire Street Ministries, and have grown to realize that even in our great country, there are many neighborhoods that, for a lot of different reasons, are really struggling. And the reality is, if I were born in a different zip code, perhaps with a different color skin, my life could be very different than my life is now. And, being in New Orleans, I saw it firsthand. I saw buildings that should have been condemned and realized people were living there.
Mm-hmm.
I saw kids that were, you're going to have to really catch this. the valedictorian of the public high school right near New Orleans, Desire Street, often couldn't pass the ACT. But think about how unfortunate it would be to be born there and to be the best of the best that your school system can offer, and that it's just they don't have the resources or the ability to create the learning environment that you and I got to experience. And so it just really propelled me to want to make a difference. And I love Desire Street's model. It's very much about supporting leaders in the neighborhood, leaders that live there, as opposed to sort of other people coming in and trying to fix something. And so we support leaders that live and serve in under-resourced neighborhoods. We help them develop their organizations, and we've helped start and build schools. We've helped start and build medical clinics, a lot of after-school care, education programs, housing, businesses, jobs that really are end goal is to transform a neighborhood. And so that's really the gist of what we do at Desire Street.
You know, I love that, but it kind of takes me into another thing I want to talk about with you, because it really coincides. You're talking about being somewhere to make a difference in that, but you've went back to your college career in a sense and are trying to encourage others to do the same, however they fashion it. And I think it's through the Wuerffel Trophy, which is obviously named after you. To me, that is really the equivalent of the NFL's Walter Payton Man of the Year, and such a big honor. Talk about the Wuerffel Trophy, please.
Well, you know, we all, before we do something, we usually have to see it done. We have to see it in a way that adds value and dignity to it. So, you know, most of the people that have done great service in the world, somebody modeled it for them. Mm-hmm. And what we found is there are hundreds, or if not more, college athletes that are doing phenomenal work, and no one knows about it. You know, if someone makes a bad decision or a bad play, you know, that's news forever. But rarely do they get the credit that they do. So the Warfall Trophy exists is to honor community service and inspire greater service in the world. You know, last year we had 100 nominees from Division I college football, and we try to do our best to honor as many of them as possible. We have, 10 semifinalists, 3 finalists, and a winner. And really, it's to highlight not just that person and their work, but to really encourage us all to do a little bit better. You know, I have three children. I have a 17-year-old son, a 14-year-old son, and a 12-year-old daughter. And I think a lot back when my boys were young. And I'm not sure about your son, but my boys and daughter at some level loved Legos. Mm-hmm. Like, they love Legos. So, when they're little bitty, every birthday, every Christmas, every time they got money, they're collecting these Legos. So they end up with, thousands of Legos. Right. And you have this room that's all Legos, and they go into play. And you would think with 2 boys and thousands of toys that there'd be plenty to share. But we know human nature, and eventually they would fight over one, and it would usually go like this. One of them would say, "Mine. No, that's mine. Mine. And then, the bigger one hits the little one cries. Yep. And when they were 2 and 4, it was kind of funny, but when they get older, less funny. And what about, if they're 20 or 40 or 50 in our case, or maybe even older, and we don't run around screaming "mine" about a Lego. But if we ask ourselves, how do we spend our time? How do we spend our money? And how do we use the talents that we have? I would say most of us, all those things are orbiting around ourselves or our family. And I think one of the greatest unlocking of the human soul in the world is when you realize that life isn't just about you, mm-hmm. and you can make a difference in the world. And everyone has a different way to do that. But if we all do our part, that can actually happen.
Yeah, I think it's a wonderful thing. There's so many different quotes that we could come up with, but ultimately, the more you give, the more you get. And I think the human soul is really soothed by helping make a difference with others. And I think it's so very important. You said something earlier. I forget what it. This is the result of being hit in the head too many times. I think not remembering that one, but I think it's so very important that we take the time to give back, because ultimately we're going to come and go, and this world is still going to be here, and it's what mark have we left on not only things, but more importantly, people. And I do remember when you talked about it earlier in terms of listening to people. I think what I heard you say, which is so important, is basically having empathy for others and trying to understand their situation, really a perspective of sorts, because some people, sometimes they just don't realize that, somebody else could have problems like them. I talk openly about some things in my childhood that were just not only not good, but just downright awful. And it actually helps me connect with people sometimes, because they were like, oh, well, all I knew was that he played in the NFL for 15 years and played in the Super Bowl and was a broadcaster and stuff like that. I didn't know he had these problems also. I think sometimes when we talk about the lesser things that have happened to us, like you said, that you were thankful for, that helps let us become a little bit more real and maybe identify with folks more.
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody is going through something. And, if I'm struggling and I see somebody who looks like they have it all together, that doesn't help me. And, that's one of the problems with social media is everyone presents themselves in the best possible light. So your life looks terrible compared to everybody's fake life online. And but to be around somebody that can actually share their struggles, I mean, that's a weird thing that you learn, that it's usually when you share your struggles, it makes more of a difference than when you kind of have it all together. And one other thing I would say about making a difference is I think a lot of people, when they think, how can I make a difference? They start envisioning themselves doing all sorts of volunteer projects that they may or may not be good at. I mean, I may be an accountant and I think I've got to go mentor a child. And maybe I love numbers and I'm not great with kids. But here's the thing that I would encourage everyone is, you're good at something, you have a talent, and there is a place that needs that. So if you are an accountant, every nonprofit I know needs you on their board. If you're a lawyer, you can go help someone think through the legal stuff. There's always something, that you have that a group probably needs, and don't always think that it has to be something different or something that you're uncomfortable with.
So I think that's very interesting. I want to unpack that a little bit, because we're talking about doing for others. I think that's great, but you're also saying, okay, me or someone as an individual is looking at what the things they have, and they're like, well, what I can do isn't that great. And kind of goes back to what you said earlier of that inner self-talk when you were talking to yourself. And I think I make it a point when I speak to folks that, it is important to help others and make a difference, but we've got to do it with ourselves first, because if we're not healthy inside and we don't feel good about ourselves inside, then ultimately we're going to run out of that emotional oxygen, as I call it, and we can only help people so long before we die inside ourselves. So I think that's a very important thing. Could you speak to that a little?
Yeah, actually, it's ironic that when we at Desire Street are working with some of the greatest selfless heroes you'll ever see. I mean, people that literally have moved their families into a very dangerous neighborhood and are serving their neighbors and loving their neighbors. There's so many things that we can help them with, but often they don't take the time to take care of themselves. And, we like to use the analogy of when you get on a plane, or when you used to get on a plane before COVID, is, when the oxygen masks come down, they always say, put yours on before helping somebody, which at first you wonder, why would you do that? Well, of course, the answer is, if you pass out, you can't help anybody. And so I think the idea of how do you, in a healthy way, take care of yourself, and not like I'm going to distract myself from life and just watch TV shows, or I'm going to, run to something or have an addiction, or there's lots of ways that we do things that we're trying to, that help ourselves that maybe aren't really helping. But there are some things that we can do to really care for ourselves, to slow down, to not work as hard, to have people that you can share some of your deeper struggles with. I love to journal. I love to sit and do mindfulness and centering prayer for as long as I can, and just sort of clear my mind of the racing thoughts. And there's just lots of ways to care for yourself. And if you are going to help somebody, you better do that too, or otherwise at the end of the day, you'll probably do as much damage as help.
It's interesting you said that about the oxygen mask that drops. I literally have one. And so when I speak, I get that out there, and I use that exact metaphor. Wow. And it really rings true because everybody gets it when you talk about that. I think it's Bradbury and Graves. They talk about we have about 200 to 250,000 words go through our mind a day, and if it's negative self-talk, as you said earlier, and things that can really get to us. So I think it's important to shift that focus to the positive. And what I hear you saying a little bit also is that's where I go for my mindfulness, my prayer. I mean, I know your faith is very strong, and I think that's something that's beautiful. I was raised Methodist. I'm thinking you're Lutheran, but I don't know for sure. I forget. I thought maybe your father was in the Air Force, but it's so very important, I think, to understand that we matter also. I have a mantra that I do a lot, which is I simply say, I matter, I make a difference, and I am enough. And really, those three little sentences oftentimes get me through a lot of difficult things, which I think many people wouldn't realize I struggle with.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that so much about you, as you do put yourself out there, and I think that's why people want to hear you. And so that's fantastic. One of my goals is to make that 250,000 words, whether it's positive or negative, make it about half that.
Exactly.
Have less noise going through there, have less obsessive thoughts, and just to kind of be present and react to what's happening and the people around me has been one of my goals. But it's tough.
Well, Danny, I know we're getting to our time limit, and I appreciate you coming on, but I just want to say a couple different things. If people wanted to learn more about Desire Street Ministries, what would they do?
Well, desirestreet.org is our website. You've got warfaltrophy.org, or if you can't remember any of those, if you can just kind of remember my name and figure out how to spell it right, DannyWeurffel.com has links to all those things. We've got a lot of exciting things happening in this upcoming year, and we'd love for people to follow us.
And then the other thing also is you do speak in the time that you have. So if people wanted to, bring you in some way, shape, or form, they would go to DannyWeurffel.com as well, and they could find you there also.
Yep. I have a few of those I do a year. I can't do a ton,
right?
But I'm always looking for the right place with the right folks to book a few of those. So, yeah, all things Danny Weurffel, just DannyWeurffel.com.
Well, that's awesome. Well, Danny, it's truly been a pleasure reconnecting with you. Tell Jessica hello, your wife, and I do remember her from our time in New Orleans. And you know what? It's just good reconnecting, and something that's going to leave a warm spot in my heart today.
Well, me too, man. Hey, you're doing great work, Kendall. I'm really glad to be a part of it. Keep it up, and God bless you, buddy. I
appreciate it. Well, that is Danny Weurffel. I am Kendall Gammon, and as always, I want to thank Crown Automotive of Lawrence, Kansas for their help and their belief that this program does make a difference. Until next week, take care.